Hi, welcome to Planetary Calendars, Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Demetrius, one of the astrologers for the calendar. This is part of our music series. It is Norah Jones, born March 30th, 1979 at 11 p.m., so it's probably a little approximate, in New York, New York. So she is born with the sun at 9 degrees Aries, conjunct Juno, the marriage asteroid. She's got the moon in Taurus, perfect position for a musician, and Sagittarius rising. It's funny, her chart is a bit split in that you have this cluster of planets in the lower hemisphere and then cluster of planets in the upper hemisphere. So her life tends to seesaw back and forth between the two. The sun in the fifth house is very powerful. It's very creative. The fact that the sun is trine the rising really opens up the channels of creativity for her, And then she has a strong Jupiter in the eighth house at the 29th degree of Cancer. Cancer is the exalted position for Jupiter, like the best friend, the colleague position. It shows that she had a lot of help in terms of other people giving her guidance. Other people kind of helping her out, she could access that very, very well. Now, she has this cluster of planets in Pisces. And if you ever watch her perform, you can really see that she's got Venus and Mars and Mercury all in Pisces, okay? There's a real dreaminess about her personality. And it's in the fourth house, the house of Cancer, so much so that I oftentimes think she must be a Cancerian. I oftentimes get the sense that she's a Taurian. Now, that's not surprising. Why? The sun is below the horizon. This is important to know. When the sun is below the horizon, the moon becomes more important. Now, if the moon was above the horizon, it becomes dominant. But when the moon is below the horizon, this becomes very important. And the moon in Taurus is the exalted position. This is, once again, the best friend position. The sun in Aries is the best friend position, the exalt position. Jupiter is exalted. Do you see a pattern going on here? She's always kind of connected to other people. There's always ways in which doors open up for her. And it's interesting because her father's a famous musician, Ravi Shankar, the great sitar player from India, though she didn't grow up with him. He was not a big presence in her life. And where would we look for that? In a nighttime chart, we look to Saturn for the father. She has Saturn in the 10th house, the house of, the patriarchy, or really the house of the lineage. Saturn in the 10th house in Virgo, right? Which can be the sign of the traveling musician, the person, the working man, you might say. After all, he works with his hands, right? Retrograde. Saturn in retrograde, highly elevated in the chart, oftentimes means that you had a distant relationship with your father, that they were out of your life for some reason. So she was much more raised by her mother, the moon in the sixth house in Taurus. It was her mother who encouraged her to go towards music. She was just a fifth house Aries Sun, creative. Sagittarius with Selena at the rising in Neptune. Very intuitive. Neptune at the rising makes a person very intuitive. Selena at the rising makes them charming. It makes them very likable. They appear upon the scene and they're just likable, right? So that was a quality of hers. And like I said, the sun trine there. Now, what's interesting is one of the qualities that she does have is she has Uranus in the 12th house. We just did another chart for someone else. I'm trying to think of it was Sting. He also has Uranus in the 12th house in a water sign. It means that in the studio, the 12th house is the studio, they're very good about working with a group. Scorpio means they're very good about managing other people. They're very good about managing the group within there. Now, it's interesting that she has Scorpio there at 20 degrees Scorpio, which is Alpha Serpentis. And it means that in that situation, she really has to watch out for like too many drugs, too much toxicity, that kind of situation. The Saturn at the midheaven kind of reinforces this, and she has midheaven in Virgo in the 10th house. There was a certain sense of mission in her career. It was kind of like this was expected of her to be in this type of work. And it's coupled with the fact that she has Vesta conjunct Mars. Vesta conjunct Mars in the 4th house in Pisces. She's a very, very intuitive person. Between the Neptune rising, the strong Pisces, and the Vesta conjunct the Mars. The Vesta conjunct the Mars tends to really power the Mars. It takes the martial energy and heats it up. But it makes her very, very sensitive to the people around her. Oh, and Venus. Now, Venus is also, exalted. So you got Venus exalted, the Sun exalted, the Moon exalted, and Jupiter exalted. Boy, is she the best friend of successful people. That's really part of her success. She just is tremendously relatable. Tremendously relatable. So that's Norah Jones. She has a really unique chart for a musician, but it really comes from that strong lineage. That Saturn is opposite that Venus from the 4th house to the 10th house. It's part of her lineage. This was the work she was expected to do. It kind of goes back to the thing, what kind of work do you do? What did your father do? What did your mother do? That's the work you're going to do. So remember, come see us on Tuesdays when we do our portraits. Come see us on Fridays when we do our forecast. You can find those at Planetary Calendar, Astrology on YouTube. And you can also come to planetarycalendar.com to find your day planner, your calendar, more books, and various other interesting videos and publications. Until next time, be well.